Do you ever feel like you're wasting time? It's a bad feeling because time is the most valuable resource we have. We can always make more money, but once an hour is gone, it's gone forever. That's why throughout my life, I've experimented with many different time management techniques and systems. And while a lot of them seem promising in the beginning, the biggest problem is that many of them are unsustainable. They require 20 different pieces of software you have to use and update every day. It was only after I trimmed away all those unnecessary parts that I found a simple and complete time management system. And in this video, you'll learn that complete system to utilize your time effectively, but more importantly, do it consistently for the long term. This simple, complete system I'll teach is something I've used for years that's allowed me to thrive in my Ivy League engineering degree, get better at video games than I've ever been, learn guitar, reach a high elo in chess, all while maintaining my relationships and making room for fun. This system is divided into 3 parts and I'll cover them one by one. And more importantly, I'll cover the super basic tools I use to implement the system into my life. So let's not waste any more time and jump right into it. First part of the system is to define 5 to 7 time buckets in your life. Time buckets are simply areas and goals you believe it's worth spending your time on. 2 time buckets I believe that everyone should have are maintenance. This includes things like brushing your teeth, sleeping, organizing your life, cleaning your room, and enjoyment. These are activities that replenish your energy, whether that's scrolling through TikTok, watching TV, taking a walk outside, having fun with friends, things that you find make you happy and give you energy but don't necessarily have any utility in your life. Most of us will also have a time bucket that surrounds a career or a job. Outside of these core time buckets, my additional time buckets are building this YouTube channel, improving my health through weightlifting and running, and actively building relationships. Yours might look completely different, but for all the time you spend in your life, try to associate it with at least one of your time buckets. And look, contrary to hustle culture, productivity guru advice, I still spend a good amount of time playing video games and scrolling TikTok, but I actively categorize those type of activities into the enjoyment bucket. Side note, if you ever find yourself playing a video game or scrolling TikTok and not enjoying it, it's a sure sign you're wasting time. If you have trouble choosing time buckets outside of maintenance, enjoyment, and career, I would use this guiding question. What are the things most important to me that I can commit to over the next 3 months? I say 3 months because after choosing your time buckets, you should commit a requisite amount of time into making progress in those areas, but also be mindful that things could change, especially when you're young. At past points in my life, my time buckets were preparing for job interviews, learning chess, learning guitar, getting good grades, practicing violin, traveling to different countries. So in addition to choosing your initial time buckets, schedule 3-month check-ins so that you can review, add, or subtract time buckets from your list. Just remember to keep it shorter than 7 things because I find that if you have more than 7, that's splitting way too much focus. If I tried to do all those previous time buckets I mentioned at once, it's likely that I would have made progress in none of them. I have check-ins every corporate quarter and I ask myself that same question. What are the most important things that I can commit to over the next 3 months? This question made me realize that after I hit a certain level in chess, it was no longer rewarding to put any effort or study into improving, so I took chess off the list and added learning guitar. I stopped building this YouTube channel for the last 3 months because for the past quarter, I've been focused on searching for and moving into my new apartment. And now that it's done, I've subtracted moving and added back building the YouTube channel. Regardless of what you choose, it's important that you're crystal clear on what your time buckets are at this point in time, and that at any point in the day, you can associate what you're doing with one of these time buckets. If you can do this, your brain will have fewer thoughts like, why am I doing this? What's the point of this? Because you'll always be able to contribute what you're doing to one of the 5 to 7 things that matter to you. The main tool I use to track and update my time buckets is Notion, and while I can make a whole separate video on Notion, my high-level Notion folder structure has a folder for each one of my time buckets. And in each of those folders, I capture useful information and specific goals I can use to build a knowledge base and reference for later. Okay, now that we have our time buckets, it's important to make sure we're spending our time within these buckets in a way that makes sense. And we do this with time blocks. Most people feel like they waste time because they go into a plan with no intention or plan for how they're going to spend their day. So they make it up on the fly and usually spend their time on the first thing that catches their attention. This could be emails or scrolling TikTok, but it's not the important work they actually need to get done. Elon Musk time blocks every 5 minutes of his day, and while you don't have to be that extreme, to be an effective person, it's definitely useful in setting an intention and plan for the day. The tool I use to time block is Google Calendar, and the method is simple but powerful. Every morning, I set one major goal for the day that I'll put at the top of Google Calendar. Usually, I'll make this a time-based goal, like spending 2 hours cleaning my apartment. Second, I will block my time in increments as granular as 15 minutes, that specify what I plan to do and make sure that I'm accomplishing that one major goal. And the secret sauce to this is to color code your time blocks in association with each one of your time buckets. For example, for me, career is blue, building this YouTube channel is purple, enjoyment is green. I work a 9-to-5 job, so a lot of my time is dedicated to that blue career time bucket. But I also build in 15-minute blocks during the day to enjoy and re-energize, as well as complete items off my to-do list, and we'll get to how I make that in part 3. But just getting in the habit of planning your day will have an immediate impact on your ability to use time effectively. I find that just like with your weight and your money spending, if you track how you're spending your time, your brain will find an automatic way to use it more effectively because it's aware. For example, if I look at the past week and see I spent a lot of time exercising, but I feel terrible, that's probably a sign that I need to scale back the exercising. And obviously you can't plan for everything. Unexpected things come up, and sometimes you simply can't stick to the plan, and that's okay. But what I do if that happens is I go back and adjust the time blocks to reflect how I actually spent my time. This is to keep me honest for tracking and for me to be able to see if I'm actually dedicating time towards the time buckets that matter to me. Last note on this, when you're planning, make sure you're realistic about your energy and ability to focus. A mistake I see with many people using time blocking is that they block every single minute of every single day to grinding, hustling towards some goal, and then they can't stick to it or quickly burn out. Remember, we're doing this for the long term, so while your ability to focus can improve, purposely plan hours in that enjoyment bucket between your working session buckets, because that time bucket is just as important as any of the others to replenish your energy, and arguably makes you more productive during your time in those time buckets that require more mental capacity. So now that we have a realistic plan for the day, the last piece of the system is to help you stick to that plan. Even if you schedule time to relax during the day, the ability to focus is still a muscle that has to be built. So, to stay on task, there are 2 methods I use. One to help me jumpstart the time block on the hard time bucket, and one to help me focus on that time block for a prolonged period of time. To jumpstart a hard time block, I use what's called a work trigger. This is just a ritual I perform before a session of focused work. My personal ritual is to set some classical minor key music and pour myself a caffeinated drink, usually cold brew coffee or tea. This ritual locks me in to at least help me get started into doing something that requires immense focus. And while that's my personal ritual, there are plenty of others out there. You can turn off your phone, write down your intentions for the time block, wash your face, pray, take deep breaths, down pre-workout, just whatever gives you that little bit of motivation to get going. But in the name of keeping it simple, I recommend just booting up some non-lyrical music and pouring yourself a drink. And if you're able to consistently do this, your body will actually get used to it. Now, every time I hear classical minor key music, my body sort of shifts into work mode. And then after you've jump-started this work session, which is half the battle, sticking to this time block is mainly an exercise in eliminating distractions. So to do this, I set a timer. Personally, I use an app called Forest, but a regular phone timer is just fine. And I keep a personal paper to-do list journal on the side. The timer helps me keep away from my phone and stay on task. And the time you set will obviously depend on your schedule and your ability to focus, but I would not be afraid to set less than 10 minutes, especially if you know you're the type that has trouble focusing. Again, focus is a muscle that can be built and you can start to prolong these sessions, but don't be afraid to start small. And while you're in this time block, as distractions come up, write them down in your notebook and try to frame them as to-dos. Because I find that the biggest distractions are to-do list items that just randomly pop into my head. Like, oh yeah, I was supposed to take out the trash, I was supposed to do laundry, I wanted to watch this new episode, I wanted to watch this new YouTube video, I wanted to buy this thing. No matter what it is, write it down, forget about it, and then reference it as your time blocking later. Alright, so quickly putting it all together, to not waste time, define time buckets you want to pursue in your life, which you can keep and update in Notion. Realistically plan every day by scheduling time blocks around your time buckets. You can do this in Google Calendar. And lastly, stick to that plan by creating rituals to jumpstart your work, and keep doing that work by eliminating distractions, using things like a phone timer and a to-do list to write down your distractions. Cool, so if you've made it this far in the video, remember that knowing this information is just half the battle. Remember to apply what you've learned and adjust as needed so it works for you.